The African sun blazed fiercely over Lagos during Christmas season. The city buzzed with noise and movement as people hurried through crowded streets beneath the dusty harmattan sky. Cold, dry wind carried fine dust through the air, while Christmas songs played from roadside shops alongside honking buses and noisy generators. Traders called for customers, children laughed excitedly, and the smell of suya, fried meat, and puff-puff filled the evening air. Despite the traffic and chaos, there was warmth everywhere. Constance Adeyemi stood beside her broken-down car, looking defeated. Lately, nothing in her personal life seemed to be working, especially her relationships. Well, not everything, she corrected herself. Her business was thriving, expanding steadily into international markets. But success and wealth had done little to quiet the growing emptiness in her heart. Pedestrians hurried past, glancing at her with mild interest. A few rough-looking men had approached her earlier, offering help. She had politely refused, telling them her mechanic was on the way. Earlier, she had called the repairman over 40 minutes ago and had been waiting ever since. The men now stood beneath a shed across the road, watching her, probably waiting for her to give up and call them instead. She dialed her repairman again. "I'm coming," he repeated. Somehow, Constance knew he was not coming. The traffic was terrible. Or perhaps he was working another job and simply did not want to tell her. From the corner of her eye, Constance noticed one of the rough-looking men walking toward her. Trying not to panic, she lifted her phone to her ear and pretended to be speaking to her imaginary husband. "My love, where are you?" she said casually, glancing back discreetly to see if the man was still following her. He was, and he was getting closer. Constance began walking toward the nearby estate, forcing herself to appear calm as she continued her fake conversation. "You're close by? All right, thank God," she said. Now the man was only a few steps away. As he opened his mouth to speak, Constance quickly raised a hand at him while keeping the phone pressed to her ear, pretending to remain deeply engaged in conversation. She was putting on a brave face, but her heart hammered violently in her chest. She needed help. Fast. Just then, a car coming from the direction of the estate slowed and stopped near them. Its sudden presence distracted everyone. By now, Constance was desperate, but still cautious. Whoever was inside the car, were they a rescuer or another threat? Then the driver's door opened, and the occupant stepped out. The man was tall and carried a commanding presence. Constance would never fully understand what pushed her that day. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the instant attraction she felt toward him. Or maybe it was the calm authority he carried so effortlessly. Before she could stop herself, she ran toward the stranger, wrapped her arms around him, and said breathlessly, "My love, finally you're here." Rory, the man who had just stepped out of the car, quickly assessed the situation and decided to play along. As a believer, a strange woman hugging him was highly inappropriate. But this woman was clearly distressed, and he had heard enough dangerous stories about this part of town. One glance at the rough-looking man standing nearby told him all he needed to know. Rory looked around and noticed several other men watching from across the road. "I'm sorry, dear. Something delayed me," he said calmly. But inwardly, his mind was racing. Was this the reason he had felt such a strong urge in his spirit to leave the house that evening? "Good evening," Rory said politely to the man. "Boss, good evening. You are the husband?" the man asked. Not wanting to lie, Rory simply smiled mildly. "Thank you for watching over her for me," he replied. Then he turned to Constance with a smile that made her heart skip unexpectedly. His tone was polite, appreciative, dismissive, and quietly authoritative all at once. Constance found herself strangely impressed by the way he handled the situation without aggression. The rough-looking man seemed disarmed by Rory's composure. After a brief pause, he stepped away and returned across the road to join the others. "What's wrong with your car?" Rory asked. "I don't know. It just stopped," Constance replied. Rory leaned slightly toward the engine while she tried starting the car again. The engine coughed weakly and died. "It seems your battery is dead," he said. "Let me use my battery to jumpstart yours." Constance watched him walk toward his car with long, confident strides. She studied him quietly. He was attractive. Very attractive. But the car he drove was a Toyota. Simple. Modest. Probably a civil servant, she concluded. One of those salary earners. But she could almost hear her mother's voice in her head. "You may miss your God-given husband by always finding fault with every man," her mother would often say. Still, this man was not up to her standards. Constance was wealthy, successful, and used to a certain class of men. She had no intention of marrying someone she believed would drain her financially. Soon, Rory drove his car closer and connected his battery cables to hers to revive the engine. As he worked, Constance observed him closely. There was something about him. A presence. Meanwhile, Rory noticed the woman beside him watching him intently. She was beautiful, but in a strangely lost way. Elegant. Sophisticated. The kind of woman who probably believed deeply in social class and status. Rory glanced across the road again. The rough-looking men were still there, watching them carefully. Between him and Constance, an undeniable attraction pulsed quietly in the air. 30 minutes later, her car finally came back to life. Rory disconnected the cables carefully and returned them to his car. "You should find out why your battery keeps running down," he said calmly. "All right. Thank you. My mechanic will handle that. I just need to get home and pick another car," Constance replied, unable to completely hide the pride in her voice. "All right, ma'am," Rory answered quietly, now noticing her tone more clearly. "She assumes I'm poor but intelligent," Rory thought inwardly. A moment later, Constance stepped closer and offered him some money. He refused gently. "I don't know why God led me out of the house this evening," he said softly. "Maybe it was for your sake. But I'll plead with you to return to your source." Before leaving, he gave her a brief, respectful hug and gestured toward her car. "You should go now. I'll wait here until you drive off safely." There was something deeply protective in the way he said it. Constance felt strangely unsettled. As she drove away, she glanced into her side mirror and saw him still standing there, watching to make sure she left safely. Back home, a realization struck her. This was the first time a man had protected her while expecting absolutely nothing in return. And she did not even know his name. Perhaps that was why she could not stop thinking about him. Christmas Eve came with the promise of hope and the blessing of the birth of the Savior of the world. Beneath the dusty Harmattan sky, the city glowed with lights, laughter, and the joyful reminder that unto mankind a child had been born. And the Grand Lagos Hotel, where the corporate gala hosted by the Association of Real Estate Developers was being held, glittered with wealth, influence, and prestige. Crystal chandeliers shone brightly above elegantly dressed guests as the sound of soft music, laughter, and business conversations filled the luxurious hall. Constance Adeyemi stood confidently on the stage, dressed in elegance and power, delivering a compelling speech about success, discipline, and the mindset required to win in life and business. The audience erupted into thunderous applause. She smiled gracefully, but the moment she stepped away from the spotlight, the emptiness returned. Later, seated alone at her reserved table, Constance pushed food around her plate absent-mindedly while soft Christmas worship music played in the background. Around her, people laughed with their families. Husbands sat beside wives. Children clung excitedly to their parents. Fiancés held hands with their future brides. Constance stared blankly ahead. Her phone vibrated again. Mom calling. She ignored it. She was already emotionally exhausted and did not want her mother asking whether she was finally bringing a man home for Christmas. For years, she had proudly played the role of the independent woman. "I don't need a man." That had always been her philosophy. But lately, she was no longer sure she believed it. The memory of the kind stranger who had helped her without demanding anything in return had stirred something unfamiliar inside her. A longing. A quiet ache. It became painfully obvious to her that night. She had everything except peace. Hours later, when she finally arrived home, she was surprised to find her mother sitting comfortably in the living room. Madame Favorite, a 60-year-old retired teacher with a warm face and observant eyes, smiled immediately when Constance walked in. "Mummy, you're here?" Constance asked, bending slightly to hug her. "Yes, my dear," Madame Favorite replied warmly. "It would not be nice for you to spend Christmas alone since husband has not yet come." Constance fought the urge to roll her eyes. Her mother was clearly trying not to mention marriage too directly. "And there is a night vigil to attend tonight," Madame Favorite added. "Mummy, I'm tired. I won't be able to attend," Constance said as she sank into the living room sofa and stretched wearily. One of the domestic staff quickly approached to collect her shoes and handbag. "I understand, my dear," her mother replied gently. "That is why you can rest for a while and attend the vigil later." Madame Favorite spoke softly as she placed a comforting hand over her daughter's. Constance looked at her mother and sighed deeply. She already knew she was not escaping Madame Favorite tonight. And somehow, without warning, her thoughts drifted back to the stranger again. The man who had pretended to be her husband just to rescue her from danger. The man whose name she still did not know. She found herself wishing he was around again to help her. "Be careful what you wish for," she whispered to herself, almost like a warning. Her mother persisted gently until Constance finally agreed to attend Christmas service. By 11:30 p.m., she found herself seated inside a Catholic church not far from her home. The atmosphere was quiet, reverent, almost piercing in its stillness. Then the sermon began. "What profits a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" The words struck her harder than she expected. She shifted in her seat, unsettled. Was she that far gone? Was she so consumed by ambition and image that she had slowly drifted away from God? She used to pray. She used to be close to him. But somewhere along the way, the hunger faded. Parties replaced church services. Business meetings replaced Bible study. And once again, her thoughts drifted, uninvited, back to the kind stranger. Constance, stop. Weeks passed. After the new year, Constance arrived at O'Cross Holdings for a billion-dollar partnership pitch. She walked into the boardroom with confidence, dressed in power and precision. Then she froze. At the head of the table sat the man from a few days before Christmas last year. The kind stranger. Rory Daniels. As she later discovered. Only now everything was different. He wasn't just a helpful passerby. He was the owner of O'Cross Holdings. Powerful. Influential. Respected. The entire room subtly deferred to him, yet he carried himself with quiet humility. Constance forced herself to breathe and proceeded with the pitch. As she spoke, she noticed something shift in the room. The numbers impressed them. The structure impressed them. But Rory's expression remained measured, thoughtful. And then he spoke. "Profit without integrity destroys people," he said calmly. "You will remove the unethical aspects of this project and return with a revised proposal in 1 week." Silence filled the room. No one had ever spoken to Constance like that before. Not in business. Not in life. Except her mother. After the meeting, she approached him. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly, referring to the night he helped her with her car. Rory studied her for a moment. He was wondering again why God kept bringing her across his path. "It was nothing," he replied calmly. "I hope you've sorted out the issue with your battery." Constance gave a small, uneasy smile. She hadn't. But she couldn't tell him she now owned multiple cars. Not when she knew whom he was now. Rory didn't smile back. He only nodded, already shifting back into professional focus. "Let's discuss the revised proposal next week," he said. Yet as they stood there, something unspoken lingered between them. An attraction. Quiet. And unmistakable. A week later, Constance returned again with her revised pitch. This time, he accepted the pitch. O'Cross Holdings agreed to invest in a multi-billion-naira real estate project sited in Rivers State. Sunshine Estate was officially underway. Over the following months, Constance and Rory worked closely together. Due diligence, restructuring, negotiations, and site reviews. What began as a business partnership slowly became a rhythm neither of them could ignore. As they worked, Constance began to notice something she had never encountered in corporate spaces like this. Rory did not believe in shortcuts. Not in money. Not in decisions. Not in life. And more than anything, he took his Christian faith seriously. He never missed his Monday 5 p.m. prayer meeting. He never skipped Wednesday Bible study. And once a month, the entire company paused for corporate prayers. When Constance first learned about it, she had genuinely thought it was a joke. Who does that? What billionaire runs a prayer meeting inside a corporation? He must be extreme, she had muttered privately. A fanatic, she concluded. Yet the more she observed him, the more that judgment began to blur. Constance found herself talking about Rory more often than she intended. One evening, Madame Favorite visited her home and caught her mid-conversation about him. They were in the kitchen together. Madame Favorite never allowed the chef to cook whenever she was around. "I prefer my own cooking," she would always say, rolling up her sleeves. And inevitably, she dragged Constance into the kitchen too, no matter how exhausted she was. "So you think he is too churchy?" Madame Favorite asked while stirring the pot. "Mummy, how many billionaires attend ordinary Sunday service faithfully? And then this one even holds monthly company prayers," Constance replied. There was a pause. The kitchen filled with the soft bubbling of soup and the fading warmth of evening light slipping through the window. Cars passed outside. Life moved on. Madame Favorite finally spoke, her tone calm. "Maybe that is why God trusted him with that amount of wealth." Constance fell silent. Her mother had a way of saying things that stayed longer than comfort allowed. She slowly stirred the pot, avoiding eye contact. Because deep down, she knew her mother might be right. Rory was an enigma, and even more confusing than him was the way she felt around him. Usually, men like that turned her off completely. Too intense, too spiritual, too serious. But with Rory, something was different. She found herself wanting to understand him more. To know what lay beneath the calm authority and quiet conviction. "Constance." "Yes, Mummy," she replied quickly. "Where is your mind?" She hesitated, then forced a small smile and focused on stirring the soup. Madame Favorite watched her closely. Her daughter was flustered over a man. That, she decided, was very good news. 2 days later, Constance was out at a club with her best friend, Sage. Sage was a beautiful 30-year-old woman, tall, slim, and with ebony black skin. She was a social media influencer and believed in paying for the services of male escorts. Sage listened patiently as Constance went on about a billionaire named Rory. "He treats janitors with the same respect as billionaires," Constance said, almost incredulous. It was obvious. Constance was fascinated. Or maybe in love? Sage tilted her head, studying her over the rim of her glass. "Is he handsome?" "Yes," Constance replied without hesitation, swaying slightly to the music and sipping her whiskey. "Very, but in a quiet way." "Handsome, billionaire, disciplined," Sage smiled. "He is basically an epitome of a husband." "He will definitely make a good husband," Sage added, a teasing glint in her eyes. To Sage, Rory was a perfect catch. Almost too perfect. Possibly too good for Constance. By midnight, Constance returned to her luxury home alone. Her mother had already gone back to her own house, leaving the vast silence of the mansion to swallow her. And then it came again. That familiar heaviness. The melancholy she could never quite explain. Despite her success, she felt hollow. Unfulfilled. At times, she drank just to sleep. If she didn't, the panic attacks would come, silent, suffocating, hidden from the world. Followed by secret tears she never admitted to anyone. What was wrong with her? Her polished life was beginning to crack in places no one could see, and she prayed it would never show in public. That night, she almost called Victor Obafemi. Victor, son of a billionaire, board member in her company, and someone she had met through business dealings when he came as his father's representative. They had clicked quickly. Too quickly. They shared a similar lifestyle, similar circles, and especially a similar philosophy about relationships. No strings. No pressure. Just convenience. But since Rory entered her life, Constance found herself hesitating. For the first time, the idea of Victor felt empty, as though something inside her was quietly pulling away from that old version of herself. The next time they met for business in Rory's office, Constance surprised even herself. "Have you always been like this?" she asked. Rory paused from his laptop. He looked up slowly. "Like what?" he asked. "All holy. Jesus-like. Churchy," she said, half teasing, half genuinely curious. For a moment, Rory said nothing. His expression stayed calm, unreadable, as he studied her face, open, searching, unguarded in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Constance thought he might not answer. Then he leaned back slightly. "I wasn't always like this," he said quietly. That alone made her look up. "I was once arrogant," Rory continued. "I nearly destroyed my life before I surrendered to Christ." The room fell into a different kind of silence. Not awkward, but heavy, meaningful. And Constance found, for the first time, that she didn't want to look away. There was a look of shock on her face. "What? You think I was born holy?" Rory said, letting out a soft laugh. "You look so holy and righteous," Constance replied, still incredulous. "Yes, now," he said, shaking his head slightly. "But I used to be a piece of work." "That is hard to believe," she admitted. "There is nothing impossible with God," Rory said calmly. "There is no sin the blood of Jesus cannot wash away." For a moment, Constance went quiet. She found herself caught in his gaze. The way he said it made the words feel intimate and convicting at the same time. Strange. The man himself was strange. Outside, the evening rain began to fall gently, tapping against the glass windows and deepening the quiet intimacy of the room. Over the next week, Constance watched Rory more closely than she intended to. The way he carried himself. The way he treated people who had nothing to offer him. And one afternoon, she witnessed something that stayed with her longer than she expected. It was the company's monthly prayer session. Staff gathered in a large hall, heads bowed, voices low. Rory stood among them, not above them. Praying, not for profit, not for reputation, but for people, for their families, for the company, for direction. He quoted softly from 1 Kings 8 and 1 Chronicles 17 verse 17, his voice steady, grounded, sincere. Constance stood at the back of the room watching him. Something inside her tightened. It was as though he had stirred a memory she had buried, the version of herself that used to pray before ambition took over, before life became noise. For the first time, she saw something she had never associated with strength. Surrender. And right there quietly she knew it. She had fallen in love with a man she could never truly have, because he would want a woman like himself. Whole, faithful, uncompromised. Meanwhile, Victor began calling more often, visiting more frequently. His presence, once convenient, now felt louder. And Constance, without fully meaning to, found herself telling him about Rory. As usual, she spoke with admiration. Too much admiration. Sage had already warned Victor that Constance only talked about Rory now. So when they met again, this time at a private upstairs lounge in a luxury restaurant, Victor didn't waste time circling around it. Below them, diners moved in and out, soft music playing in the background, glasses clinking gently in a world that felt far away. "Are you in love with him?" Victor asked. Constance paused mid-sentence. "No," she started quickly. But then she stopped. Silence stretched between them. She didn't like the question. Not because it was wrong, but because his tone made falling in love feel like mediocrity. "Why are you asking me that?" she finally said, setting her glass down. Her tone was sharper than intended. Victor studied her quietly, taking a slow sip of his drink. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't teasing. Just watching, like someone who had already seen the answer and was waiting for her to catch up to it. He could not remember ever seeing Constance being excited about anything, not even when her company won its first billion-naira real estate contract. He also wanted to be careful. Constance was fiercely independent. Their on and off relationship was very beneficial to him. Aside from the obvious, he was hoping they could have a contract marriage and, after a child or two, an heir to her wealth, he would move on with his life. But now she was falling in love with Rory Daniels. Rory Daniels. The man was a killjoy. Stiff. He made contract execution difficult. Victor sometimes wondered how he made his billions. "Religious men always want control," Victor said finally. Several expressions passed across her face. Then it settled into something he could not name. "I am not in love with him," Constance said carefully. "Just be careful. You don't really know him," Victor continued. There was silence as both made a pretense of eating, while the soft background music floated around them. "Victor, what are we doing?" "Like, where is this going?" she said, now toying with her fork. Victor had not expected the question. Was it not obvious? To him, it meant Constance was developing feelings for Rory. But this question was in his favor. "We could make something permanent out of our arrangement," Victor said. Constance was looking at him. Had he just evaded her question and moved straight to marriage? As if marriage, to him, was the solution to every problem in the world. And the way he said it, as though her feelings meant nothing. "Are you proposing marriage to me?" she asked carefully. Victor swallowed hard. Constance was now sounding confrontational. The version of Constance that was fun-loving and did not care about anything he could handle. Not this one. And no thanks to Rory. "We could take things to the next level," he began. "You know, a contract marriage. We could have a child or two. After a specified period of years, then we can discreetly separate and go on to enjoy our lives," Victor said. Silence settled between them. Before Rory Daniels, she would have jumped at this opportunity. After all, a contract marriage would have been a win-win for everyone involved, especially considering her desire to escape her mother's constant talk about marriage. But now she wanted more from life. She wanted something real, probably with a man who saw her and made her feel protected. Like the kind stranger. But was she not building castles in the air? Rory would never love a woman like her. But you can be a woman that he will wish he had. The thought came unbidden. And right there she saw a version of herself she loved, and God and her mother would approve of. A version of herself that deserved better than a cold marriage with a calculating man. "Constance, I would not want a marriage with you," Constance said simply. Victor did not expect her to say no. His heart thudded. Rory Daniels. He had come here to pressure her toward a morally questionable merger, and he was losing ground to a man who was not even trying to win her, or even aware that a woman was slowly falling for him. "Why? If I may ask," Is it because of Rory Daniels? Victor said, trying to push disapproval into his tone. Constance, now divided between ambition, love, and conviction, said, maybe because I suddenly realized I want more out of life. And I would not get that from you. More out of life? Victor repeated. Yes, she said with finality. Days later, Rory and Constance were coming from a proposed site for the real estate project. The afternoon was warm, with a soft, golden haze stretching over the half-developed land. The ground was uneven, marked by survey lines, steel rods, and the quiet promise of something yet to be built. In the distance, construction workers moved like small silhouettes against the wide sky. They discussed business, but as usual, an unspoken tension lingered between them, an invisible pull neither of them acknowledged aloud. Every pause felt heavier than the words spoken. Every glance held a fraction too long. Rory had tried to ignore it. Attraction to a single woman was not a sin or a problem. The issue was the person. Why Constance? Rory mentally ticked off a number of eligible sisters in the Lord he knew. Women who were suitable for marriage, stable, predictable, uncomplicated. So why was he drawn to this woman? She was not the most beautiful, nor the most compliant, nor the richest. Yet somehow, she unsettled his thoughts more than any of them ever had. He glanced out through the car window. Her perfume, a soft feminine scent, filled the space, unsettling him in a way he could not quite explain. It made him restless, as though he were searching for urgent answers. Lord, please help me, he prayed. What do you want in a woman? Constance asked. Rory turned to her. Was she a mind reader too? He thought. Aye, he began. She should be a lover of God, and God should approve of her for me. Is that all? Constance asked, surprised. What kind of answer were you expecting? Rory replied. Constance considered the question and realized she had thought about it before. She had always assumed Rory's kind of woman would be someone exceptional, and that she would be godly like him. The only thing she was certain of was this: she was not his type. I don't know, she said. I've never really thought about it. It was a lie. Silence settled in the car. And you? He asked quietly, looking into her eyes. What kind of man do you want? They were becoming used to these moments. Moments when the world seemed to stand still, when they were lost in each other's eyes. Rory looked away first. Constance knew the answer. But she did not want to be vulnerable with Rory. Or should she? Then she heard herself say the words that changed everything. Someone like you, she said. Rory did not turn to look at her. Somewhere inside, he already knew the answer, because he could feel that what they shared was mutual. Constance, startled by her confession, quickly tried to correct herself. I admire you, she said, wincing. She was digging deeper into an already exposed minefield. But Rory still did not look at her. He kept his gaze fixed out of the window, his posture rigid. You have changed my perspective about life and about what a godly man should be, and that godliness is attractive, Constance said, her words tumbling out. Silence stretched between them. Jesus makes the difference, Rory said calmly. Constance made no reply. But she had come to understand it. Jesus truly makes the difference. And now she was beginning to think that she needed Jesus too. Not because she hoped Rory would look her way, but because she was finally beginning to lay down a secret burden she had carried for too long. In the following months, Rory prayed. He needed to pray about his growing feelings for Constance. Guard my heart, Lord, he prayed one Saturday night. But the prayer he prayed most often was, Lord, what are you saying about my feelings for Constance Adeyemi, a woman who does not share my faith? He stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows in his room. Lord, help me. Help me make sense of all this, he whispered again. There was no answer. The Lord had not spoken. Lord, should I stop working with her? No, the Lord replied. That was one question he always received an answer to. He should not stop working with Constance. Meanwhile, he continued to feel the attraction. Lord, what are you doing? There was no answer, at least not yet. But he clung to the knowledge that he was precious to God, and that God was working behind the scenes for him. Meanwhile, Constance was undergoing a transformation. It started slowly. What is going on with you? Sage asked one day. They were in Constance's house on a Friday evening. Sage was spending the night because Constance had refused to visit her. There is nothing wrong with me, Constance replied. Silence. Are you in love with that billionaire? Sage asked. That is not the issue, Constance said. So you are not denying it? Sage pressed. The point is that I see myself differently from before I met him, Constance admitted honestly. You feel different now? How? Don't tell me you want to join those religious fanatics, Sage said. Silence. There is nothing bad about being a child of God. Look at Rory. He is born again and still rich, Constance said. He is living a boring life, Sage scoffed lightly. Don't act like you wouldn't jump at the opportunity to marry him, Constance said. Not interested in any man. Not when I can buy my pleasure online. Sister, that is ghastly. And whose opinion counts? Constance shook her head with a sad smile. So, you want to marry him? I don't know. Honestly, that is not what is important. What matters is that I settle things with God before I can start talking about marriage. The shocked look on Sage's face was unmistakable. You, Constance, talking about marriage? Sage said. Who are you, and what have you done with my friend? Constance laughed in spite of herself. Babe, you love this man. It was a fact. Constance did not deny it. But a pained expression briefly crossed her face, lingering just long enough for her friend to notice. I wish he loved you as much as you love him. I think he does, Constance replied softly. But he is a man of God, so he may never act on it. The knowledge felt like a warm breeze on a scorching day, gentle, yet offering no real comfort. What? Why? All this time, I thought it was a one-sided love story. I just told you. He is born again, and I am not. A shocked expression appeared on Sage's face. For heaven's sake. You see why I said he is boring? You two love each other, and you are just going to let it go. Constance made no reply. Silence settled between them again, each woman lost in her own thoughts. Constance could no longer deny that her encounter with Rory had changed her for the better. She could not help comparing Victor and Rory. While Victor devised one evil scheme after another, Rory quietly demonstrated through his actions that life in Jesus was truly rewarding. Constance thought about her mother. No matter how old she became, her mother's lessons would always remain relevant. If she had listened to her earlier, perhaps she would have had a chance with Rory. Even so, she made up her mind to return to God. She would put her life in order and cut ties with people like Victor. And if Sage tried to discourage her, she would distance herself from her too. Babe, what's on your mind? You look far away, Sage said. I may not have the man, but I will have God. I am going to rededicate my life to God, she announced. Silence followed. Sage was surprised, though not entirely shocked. The signs had been there. Constance had stopped going to clubs for over a month. Victor had even complained about her to Sage, blaming Rory for the sudden change. All right, if that is your decision, Sage said quietly. Constance was slightly taken aback by her calm acceptance. She had expected laughter or perhaps a sarcastic remark. My friend, I hope you are doing this for yourself, Sage added gently. Constance heard the unspoken question clearly. Was she doing this for Rory? Yes. I want to give my life to Christ and experience the same peace I see in him. Though Constance never mentioned Rory's name, Sage knew exactly who she meant. The following Sunday, Constance attended the church closest to her home and surrendered her life to Christ. For several weeks, she was happy and at peace. But the transformation process that followed was painful, so painful that she often felt like giving up. It began when her company was suddenly hit with a scandal. Someone submitted documents proving that she had covered up unethical practices in a real estate development years earlier. Someone had deliberately dug up dirt on her. But to what end? To ruin her? To destroy her business? After some investigation, she discovered the truth. Victor had publicly betrayed her. Media humiliation exploded online. Investors began pulling away. Associates disappeared. Everyone distanced themselves from Constance. Everyone except Rory Daniels. Although he never publicly involved himself in the scandal, he remained quietly supportive in the background. Knowing that he had not abandoned her made Constance realize that God had not abandoned her either. Even during moments when she broke down emotionally and felt worthless, she remembered that Rory had not withdrawn from the Sunshine Real Estate project like so many others had. That truth brought her deep comfort. One evening, she called her mother in tears. "Mummy, I am tired of everything," she cried. Madame Favorite already knew that her daughter had rededicated her life to God, and she feared the situation might discourage her. "My baby girl, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them from them all. God has your back. Go to church and tell Jesus exactly what you are telling me now. Plead for mercy. The Lord will help you," her mother said tenderly. That evening, Constance went to church alone. No pride, only tears. For the first time in years, she prayed honestly. "Jesus, I have surrendered to you. I have repented of my past. Please show me mercy. Mercy, Lord, she cried. Then she felt a warmth settle over her, followed by overwhelming peace. At that moment, she knew God had heard her cry for mercy. And somehow, she knew everything would eventually be all right. Perhaps that was why she never confronted Victor. She was guilty, and only God's mercy could save her. Meanwhile, Rory was fully aware of the scandal. After all, it had become public news. Some members of the board had even reached out to him with concerns. They feared that O'Cross Holdings' association with Constance might cost them clients and affect the company's reputation. But Rory reassured them. To him, however, that was not the issue. The real question was this. Was this part of Constance's past the reason God had remained silent about his feelings for her? And what exactly did he want from God? Did he want God to tell him to go ahead and marry Constance? There were still no immediate answers. 3 weeks after the scandal broke, Constance walked into Rory's office. Rory did not know what to expect. Perhaps she would come in broken and defeated. Or worse, completely indifferent. But the woman who entered his office that Monday morning was glowing with quiet peace. "Good morning, Rory," she said as she sat across from him. "Good morning, Miss Constance," Rory replied. "Something is different about you," he said before he could stop himself. Constance smiled slightly and urged him to begin the business of the day. For the next 3 hours, Rory's mind reeled. He observed her carefully. She was at peace, and it seemed to come from deep within. Even though he had not known what to expect, this calm version of Constance completely amazed him. Several times, Constance caught Rory watching her when he thought she was not looking. She wondered why he kept stealing glances at her. The attraction between them was still there, but now something else had been added to it. Something pure. Something deeper. Something that felt like a blessing. It was only when she was leaving that Rory finally understood what had changed. He had accompanied her to the elevator when one of his staff members, Mrs. Nwobodo, stopped to greet Constance. Mrs. Nwobodo was in her late 50s, carried strong Scripture Union energy, and was famously bold about evangelism. "Sister Constance, good afternoon," Mrs. Nwobodo said warmly. "Good afternoon, Ma. Sorry, Ma, I heard you came visiting, but I had not returned." "From work by then," Constance replied respectfully. "I guessed as much. No problem. I will inform the other members of the visitation team that I saw you," Mrs. Nwobodo said. "All right, Ma. So, we will see you at Bible study today?" Mrs. Nwobodo asked. "I would not miss it for anything," Constance replied with a smile. Rory watched the exchange silently. Now it all made sense. Constance had given her life to Christ. That was why she was at peace despite the storm around her. As she stepped into the elevator, she caught him watching her again. She had not told him yet that she was now a believer because she feared he might think she had done it simply to gain his attention. After she left, Rory had much to think about. He already knew the details of the scandal. Because of their business relationship and the possible threat to his company, Rory had thoroughly investigated the matter. Victor Obafemi, Constance's ex-lover, was behind the scandal. According to Rory's sources, it was an act of revenge because Constance had refused to continue the relationship. The same sources also revealed that, according to one of Sage's close friends, Rory was the reason Constance ended the affair. But after seeing the peace and transformation in her, Rory no longer believed that he was the reason. Constance had genuinely returned to Christ, and heaven was rejoicing. Then he heard God's voice. "Why are you happy?" the Lord asked. Rory hesitated. Was it too early to rejoice? "Constance has given her life to Christ," Rory replied softly. Silence. "Yes, she has returned home," the Lord said. Another silence followed. "And she is your heart's desire," the Lord continued. It was a simple statement of fact. Rory said nothing. "She is my will for you," the Lord said finally. Rory's heartbeat quickened. He almost asked the Lord to repeat himself, but he remembered Psalm 62 verse 11. And he understood the things God had left unsaid. At first, it had seemed as though God was refusing to answer him. But now it was clear that God had been waiting for Rory to fully accept the new Constance, and for Constance herself to return to him. Still, Rory knew he needed to pray further and seek proper guidance. Right there in his office, he knelt and thanked the Lord. Later that evening, Constance had just returned from Bible study and was eating supper when Rory called. Her heart fluttered. Why was he calling? "Hello," she answered. "Good evening, Miss Constance. I hope I am not disturbing you," Rory said. "Not at all. Sorry, I should have asked earlier. How are you holding up regarding the scandal? Rory asked gently. This was not what she had expected. Then again, what exactly had she been expecting? Was she expecting him to confess his love? She sighed inwardly. The old melancholic self was trying to resurface. Constance, don't do that to yourself. Your heavenly Father has you, she reminded herself. I have to make restitution to the owners of the real estate properties, she explained. And others are beginning to come forward, claiming that my company may have compromised their projects as well. That could mean a huge financial loss, Rory said carefully. Yes, Constance admitted. But I am confident that God will rebuild me and everything that concerns me. What about the whistleblower? Rory asked. He is still on the board. Honestly, I am no longer bothered about him. If I were innocent, I would have taken legal action. But now, I am fortunate to be settling things out of court. Good, Rory said softly. I will keep you in my prayers. After the call ended, Rory came to a conclusion. Constance had chosen integrity over profit. She may have lost money, but she had gained peace. Meanwhile, Madame Favorite watched with joy as her daughter continued to grow in Christ. She even told Constance's siblings about the transformation taking place in her life. Gradually, Sage became more of an observer in Constance's life than an active participant because Constance now spoke a different language, the language of righteousness and the fear of God. And Victor, completely unbothered by what he had done, continued his reckless lifestyle without remorse, unaware that God had marked him. Soon, he too would have a story to tell. Meanwhile, the relationship between Rory and Constance deepened steadily, though neither of them openly admitted their feelings. However, they now existed within the same spiritual environment. They prayed to the same God, studied the same scriptures, and slowly, without either of them forcing it, friendship began to blossom into something deeper, steadier, and far more dangerous to their hearts. It began with simple conversations, discussions about business, life, and purpose. Then Rory would casually quote a Bible verse, and Constance would either listen attentively or surprise him by responding with one of her own. At first, whenever she visited Rory's company, she avoided the monthly prayer meetings. She would stay in her office or find somewhere else to be. But gradually things changed. One afternoon she attended. Then she attended again. Soon, joining the prayer meetings became natural to her. Then came the business dinners. At least, that was what Constance called them in her mind. But she soon realized she looked forward to them far more than she should. Especially the way Rory looked at her. Those quiet, intentional glances made her heartbeat stumble every single time. What was Rory up to? No. What was brother Rory up to? 3 months later, Rory formally asked her out. They had just finished a meeting regarding the real estate project when he invited her to dinner the following Saturday evening. They held each other's gaze. What for? She asked softly. Rory seemed to search for the right words. I want us to relax in a calm environment. We have both worked hard. But the look in his eyes said far more. She wanted to hope, but she restrained herself. It could simply be a friendly dinner. Until she arrived and realized it was not. The atmosphere was softer, more personal, and Rory looked nervous. That alone shocked her. On their second official date, Rory finally spoke plainly. Constance, I do not want to keep wasting time. From the very first moment I saw you, my heart and spirit knew you were the one. Even before my mind could fully understand it, he said gently. I have prayed about this carefully. It would be my greatest honor to have the opportunity to court you. Constance remained quiet for a moment. You prayed? Yes. And I believe God led me to you the day your car broke down, Rory continued. So, what do you say? Constance laughed through sudden tears. Because she remembered that evening vividly. The evening she called him her husband out of desperation. Looking back now, she realized that even during her years of rebellion and unfaithfulness, God had remained faithful to her. It would be my greatest pleasure too, she replied softly. They smiled at each other. We are going to take this slowly and properly, Rory said. In the months that followed, they both became acquainted with each other's families. Constance had 3 siblings, all of whom were delighted to meet the man God had used to bring their sister back to Christ. Madame Favorite loved Rory immediately, and had already begun planning the wedding in her mind. Rory had only one sibling, an older brother, who was a pastor in the United Kingdom. He spoke with Constance over the phone and warmly welcomed her into the family. It was another Christmas Eve, 1 year later, and this time, they were taking another step toward fulfilling God's purpose for their lives together. In a simple gathering filled with love, Rory proposed quietly in a romantic setting. The atmosphere between them was filled with faith, peace, and love rooted in God. Rory held her hands gently. "I prayed for a woman who loved Jesus more than she could ever love me," he said softly. Joy filled Constance's heart as she smiled at him. "Me too," she whispered. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes, I will." And Rory slipped the diamond ring onto her finger. 6 months later, they were married. After the church service and brief reception, Rory and Constance went together to a motherless home, hand in hand, serving food to the children with joyful smiles on their faces. She had spent her life chasing success, pleasure, and power, until God led her to the only wealth that truly lasts. The end. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe for notifications about more godly love stories and like the video. Who is your favorite character? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you.